I had a client stop mid-sentence today and call himself a sissy, and we had to deep dive that. The context of it was that he was sharing how he felt like his wife was prioritizing everybody else except for him, that she was choosing everybody else over him. And as he was saying that, he stopped about 3/4 of the way through. He said, "God, I feel like such a sissy for saying that." And I went, "You're a man desiring your partner to choose you, and that you're labeling as a sissy?" Let's unpack. Those are not his words. Now, yes, those words came out of his mouth, so technically, yes, they were his words. But he was not born with that connection of having a want for connection with someone, desiring intimacy, desiring being chosen, having feelings for something or someone is bad, negative, a sissy. No. That comes from dad, maybe grandpa, maybe a mom, right? It is all based on environmental conditioning. And so it's interesting because a lot of our conversation today was him just starting to recognize that, hey, the thoughts you think, they're not always true. In fact, none of them have to be true. You get to decide whether they're true or not. But the way that you decide if something is true or not is based on your conditioning, the way that you were taught, the things that were taught to you. And so you can think you're a piece of shit. And you're like, it's true. Look at all this evidence of my life where I've been a piece of shit. But you didn't believe when you were born that you were a piece of shit. It was conditioned into you. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have shitty behaviors, but your identity of being a shitty person, you get to decide whether that's true or not. And I can tell you when something's a lie versus when something's true. Something is a lie when you think it and it doesn't feel good. What? Yeah, it really is. And this is the magic of what I do with clients is we work on perspective shifting. And we start to soften the words and the language and the way you speak to yourself and the words that come out of your mouth to see what is true versus what isn't true. So for example, if he believes that he thinks he's a sissy for wanting his wife to choose him or make him a priority, that didn't feel good when he called himself a sissy. And so I counter that by saying, wasn't it normal for a partner to want to be chosen and to feel like a priority to another partner? Yeah. Okay. So by you stating that you desire for your wife to prioritize you, does that feel empowering or disempowering? Well, it feels disempowering because she wasn't choosing him. Okay, fair. Well, could she choose you? Could you be a priority? Yeah, I think I could. Okay, can she choose you? She may be. I don't know. Okay, what's blocking her from choosing you, right? And this is where it would lead to them having a conversation about, hey, I'm not feeling like a priority in this marriage, in this life that we're building. And I'd like to work on that improving. And here's what I'm experiencing. And it can lead to a really great connection. Now, she would need to be receptive of that as well. She would not need to be defensive or deflective in those conversations, sure. But we worked on him getting empowering language as opposed to where he said he was expressing feelings and felt like a sissy, because that's not going to get you any closer to having the connection that you desire by avoiding the feelings. Here's what I want to say to men and those that are in relationships with men that operate in this way of thinking, right? Where feelings or emotions are not masculine or are not manly. You are a human, therefore you have feelings and emotions. I like to use the term nervous system regulation with my male clients because that seems to be less polarizing to some of them. What is happening is you have a thought in your head that your amygdala and your limbic system releases hormones into the body that create contraction in the muscles, creates your heart racing, creates your breathing going faster. Those are what we equate to feelings. So from a logical, physiological perspective, a feeling is just hormones being dumped into your body based off of your thoughts, sometimes based off of past traumas that are all living in the subconscious. We won't go into that today. I go into that in the programs. But you're not bad, wrong, a sissy, a woman, or whatever label you want to put on it for having feelings. You are a human. Congratulations, right? Think about it. When you're born, after you take your first breath, what's the next thing you do? You cry. And what do? Yay, the baby's healthy because they're crying. So isn't it interesting that we go from celebrating crying because it's a sign of life to repressing emotions as a sign of gender? I guess, a sign of weakness when we're celebrating as a sign of life in one aspect, but it's a sign of weakness in another aspect. Okay? It's all nervous system regulation. And when you can figure out how to regulate your nervous system, notice I didn't say repress your nervous system because that's probably what you're already doing. How's that doom scrolling going? Yep. When you can regulate your nervous system, meaning that you have tools and skills to be able to discharge emotions healthily and not onto somebody else and not through a fight, flight, fawn, or freeze response, that you have the ability to process nervous system, feelings, emotions, so that they don't keep driving your behavior and your decisions, that's when you start to experience more peace. Peace is not the absence of feelings. It's not. Peace is knowing how to create, what is the word I'm looking for? Homeostasis, right? So that you can have the high highs and you can have some low lows, but you know how to get yourself back to neutral to be able to be regulated, okay? So it's not the avoidance of highs and lows, which most, I'm going to be very gender-based here. Most men keep their emotional range here, because they're afraid if they pop the lid a little bit on one, they don't know what they're opening up and they don't have the skills and tools to be able to put the lid back on if it gets to be too intense. That's why I like breathwork. Breathwork is the primary tool. It is intense. It is an hour of breathing where we start to intentionally pop the lid on your emotions to be able to understand them in a safe container, right? In a controlled environment for you to express and explore what's going on in your nervous system so it stops driving your lived experience in everyday life. So if you want to learn more about that and you're a man and this is like information that you're like, finally, fucking, I can figure this out and I can learn this, cool, DM me the word heal. Let's chat about my program called Healthy Mentality. Otherwise, like this, and then you'll see more of my content, which is very much similar to speaking to men and their nervous system regulation. Oh, and if we haven't met before, my name is Tara. I'm on a mission to create a self-aware army. It's just lonely in these self-aware streets, man.